Happy Planksgiving. It's that special time of the year where I get to use worn-out fitness puns to relate holidays to exercises. Today, we are giving thanks for planks. This is the Benniebarrefitness Pilates studio. Today, I'm bringing you into my Pilates studio to work through plank variations on the mat and using props and Pilates apparatus. We will be working on the spine corrector, chair, springboard, and reformer. But first, I would like to point out that you should be solid in your standard planks before adding in challenging variations. To check on your form, you can watch my How to Do a Proper Plank video for helpful tips to help you hold a strong plank. Links below and in the upper right-hand corner. We'll begin on the mat with some classical mat Pilates exercises involving the plank. Stepping back out into the plank, we're going to do the leg pull down first. So we'll float up one leg and we're going to shift the weight forward and back. That standing foot, we're going to rise up on the toe and then send the heel back. As we come forward, the weight comes more into the arms and over top of the wrists. Switching feet right here, lifting the left leg and shifting the weight forward and back. We'll switch feet here and do another variation of this exercise, holding the plank and lifting and lowering the leg. Keeping the body as stable as possible while you lift and lower the leg. All of these planking exercises are total body integration, and you will find that it gets a bit heavy through the wrists. So switching legs right here, we'll make sure that we take time to stretch and rest the wrists in between. Next, we're going to drop down and we'll come into the leg pull up. So we're going to be in a reverse plank position. The fingertips facing forward, we're going to reach the arms back, lift into that reverse plank. And we're going to lift a single leg. We'll take 5 repetitions on each leg and then repeat. Hold nice and steady in that reverse plank and now switch to the other side. Keep the chin tucked forward and looking over the feet so as not to put strain in the neck. Switching legs again. Try to keep those hips nice and high. We're doing just 5 on each leg and then switching so we can reassess and make sure that we're holding that good posture with breaks in between. And lowering down. Next, we'll move into some of our side planking exercises in the classical Pilates series. So we want to make sure that that top leg comes to the front and that the wrist is underneath the shoulder, lifting the other wrist up. We're going to start with the side bend. So we lift up and over, lifting the hips, and then dip the hips down towards the mat. Great, let's go ahead and switch sides and we'll take the side bend on the other arm. Think about keeping the hips stacked over top of hip, shoulder over top of shoulder. Remember that that top leg, the foot should be in the front for these Pilates exercises. Good, now we're going to come back to the original side, but first we'll take a little rest here in rest pose. Now coming back into that side plank position, we're going into the twist. We'll start by dipping the hips down, then lifting the hips and twisting, reaching underneath. Dipping down, lifting up, twisting as you reach that arm through. This exercise is a real balancing act. You could start out practicing this by being on your forearm, so there's less of a lift and reach through. It's common sometimes for people to fall over when they first start doing this one. Lifting up, stay nice and steady, dip those hips, and reach through. We've switched to the other side now, dipping down towards the mat, lifting the hips, twisting and reaching, looking through underneath your body. Good, and coming back into that plank, push back into the rest pose. Next, we're going to be moving into some other variations of planking exercises. So we'll come out into that plank stance, and we're going to go into a 3-point plank. So we're going to lift the left arm, lower, lift the right arm, lower, lift the right leg, lower, lift the left leg, and lower. So we're going to switch and be constantly lifting a different limb so that we're balancing through 3 other points with our limbs that are down on the mat. Shifting our weight and trying to hold as steady as possible through that plank as we move the various limbs. You may find that this is easier to lift just your legs or just your arms, and you can do some kind of variation there. But if you can try to cycle through all 4 in a nice round, that will give your body a unique challenge. It's prop time. Grab 1 yoga block. We're going to place that down in the center, and we're going to take our hands to either side of the block and come out into that plank. We're going to go into an uneven plank. Lifting up, we're going to walk those hands one at a time onto the block and walk them back down onto the mat. Up, up, down, down. Next, we'll switch things up and we'll put the yoga block at the end of our mat, and we're going to place our feet on the block with our wrists underneath us. So this makes it a little bit more challenging. Place your feet on first and then walk out to that plank position. We're going to tap the toes off to the side, and anytime that we lift our hands up higher, we're making the plank slightly less challenging, and when we lift our feet, elevate them a little bit higher, it makes the plank more challenging, placing more weight and emphasis onto our hands. So just coming right here, we're just going to tap the foot down and then lift back up onto the block. Dropping down to the knees and coming back to a rest pose. Let's go into a little wrist stretch here. So we're going to turn our palms facing up, fingertips facing towards our knees, and we're just going to lean backwards a little bit, putting the weight back into our hips and letting them stretch. If you don't do a whole lot of body weight work where you're placing weight onto your wrist often, it can be really challenging to do a lot of planking and plank variations. Good, now turn the fingertips facing in and just bring your weight with your shoulders directly over your hands. Palms are still facing up. So taking strengthening stretches and things like that for your wrists are important. Now let's turn our palms down and our fingertips facing out for just a moment, directly underneath the shoulders. And then turning so the fingertips are facing back towards your knees and letting it stretch right here. Shoulders over top of the wrists. And if that feels comfortable and you can lean the weight back and away, go ahead and do so and increase that stretch here. Good. Coming up and out of that, let's just circle the wrists around. Move them up and down, and move the wrists around in circles. Switch directions. Next, we're going to go into some bar-inspired plank work with ballet arms. We're going to reach into a side plank, and we're going to round through the elbow. Take that arm from first position up to high fifth. So just right in front of your sternum and up overhead. Round through the elbow, hold that body up nice and strong, chest open. Now we're taking that arm from our first position to a second position in front of the chest and opening out to the side. Still round through the elbow, coming in front and lifting up overhead. Really feel the challenge on the core and that side body, not only as we hold it, but as we move an arm through that position. Switching over to the other side, coming from first to high fifth. And now first to second. Good, recenter yourself, drop through the knees and come back into rest pose. Turning those palms facing up. And just breathing for a moment. And reaching back out into plank. Get those ballet arms ready. We're gonna lift up the right arm and just nice relaxed round elbow. We're gonna lift that arm out to the side and then bring it in towards our center. So going from a first to a second position here as we're steadying on those 3 points, the left hand and the 2 legs. Switching sides, same thing. Sometimes just adding in one moving limb is enough to challenge the entire body in a new and unique way. Bringing those hands down, drop back down to rest pose here. Next, I'm moving on to the spine corrector. I'm placing the barrel towards me and the step facing away on my mat. I want to make sure I have enough room to place my feet on my mat as well, so I'll shift it up a little bit. My hands are going to come to that barrel and just wrap around that rounded edge as I walk back and hold a plank here. This can feel really good on the wrist to have kind of a different movement, not being on a flat floor, but up on this barrel. And of course, the upper body is more elevated here, so it becomes less challenging the more you lift up the upper body. We're just holding that plank there. We're keeping the neck nicely in line with the spine. Go ahead and drop down now. And now we're going to reverse that, placing the feet up on the barrel, the hands down on the mat. So now our plank is angled down. There's a lot more weight coming into the arms and the wrists. And it's more challenging core-wise when the feet are lifted higher than the wrists are. You may find your body shaking a whole lot more when you flip around this way. And stepping the knees down out of that plank. Next, we're turning back around and placing the hands onto the barrel, stepping out into that plank. And from here, we're going to lift one arm, stretching it forward and away, replace, and switch each time, alternating. Lifting the left, lifting the right. Trying to stabilize the hips and the feet as much as possible while we shift the weight. Now let's take that arm out to the side. Reaching out, return, other side. And stepping those knees in. Now turning around, hands to the mat, feet up onto the barrel, coming into that nice plank position. And now we're gonna reach a toe down, tap it down towards the floor and lift back up. Try to stay nice and stable and steady through the shoulders, through the hips, and let that movement just be in the legs. This is taking what we did on the yoga block and making it more intense because you've got a wider range of motion for your leg to come down and lift back up. And bringing those legs in. I'm taking a little wrist break here. Remember that anytime that you need to stretch out or circle through your wrists or give them a break, to take a little pause and do so. Sometimes it can feel relieving for me just to hold my palms up, wiggle my fingers, and squeeze a fist and release. Next, I'm turning the spine corrector so that my barrel is facing away and the step or the seat is facing towards me. I'm placing my hands onto that seat right here and then stepping out into a plank. This can be a nice change of pace with the fingertips facing down on that slant. Now I'm rocking forward here up onto my toes and back through the heels and shifting my weight forward. Right here, my wrists are higher than my fingertips, and it's a nice change of pace for them. This is a variation of the leg pull down, but with both feet down. Now coming back to rest pose and stretching back and away. We're next going to side plank, and it's going to be a nice relaxing variation. We're going to bring that knee in towards the barrel, and the hip is balancing on the barrel. Left hand is down on the mat, right hand is reaching up towards the sky, and with the knee facing forward, we're going to lift and lower that leg. So the spine corrector is supporting us here in this side plank rather than all of the weight coming through our bottom leg. Good. Now we're going to go into a little side bend right here with the support of the barrel. So we're lifting up in that side plank position, side bending, reaching over, and then just stacking back up tall again. These exercises here over top of the barrel are really supportive. They're a nice break. We're coming into the lower body a little bit more and then stretching. Good, let's go ahead and switch sides. So remember that that inside leg is going to come into the crease of this step. The hip is going to balance on top of the barrel. The hand that's reaching down the ground, fingertips are pointing away. And you can have your hand down on the barrel if that's more comfortable than reaching up and lengthening towards the sky, as I did in the first variation. Now bringing the arm up, we're going to go into that side bend, and that top leg, the toes are just reaching down towards the mat. Thinking about reaching up and out of the hip, stretching through the body here, while that spine corrector is doing tons of work to just support you and help you hold your place in space. Next, I'm moving on to work on the springboard. I'm grabbing my shorter springs with my hand straps attached and placing them on my springboard at a level 6. Now we're going to step out into a plank, and taking the left hand, we're going to grab onto that hand strap, and we're going to have that arm sweeping back towards the hip and back forward underneath the body. Switching sides right here. Not only are we challenging the stability by having one limb lifted up, but that limb is also pulling a spring away from the wall. Little rest right here. And then we're going to be moving into a side plank variation utilizing the springs. Left hand down with fingertips towards the bar. Right hand is holding on to that handle. And we're going to sweep that hand down towards the body and then lift back up. You can modify here by bringing that inside knee down to the mat. We're going to switch to the other side. And remember that in the side plank, we're going to have that top leg in the front. Good, and coming out of that really adds in a whole new stability challenge. Next, we're gonna remove the hand straps and grab our rollback bar that we're gonna attach to our shorter springs. They're still set to a level 6. We're gonna be doing some kneeling plank work to start, and then we'll do standing plank work. So make sure that you're comfortable with a kneel first. If standing is too much, come back to the kneel. So we're gonna face away from the springboard with the heels pressing up back towards the board, and we're going to press that rollback bar out and hold out in a plank position. Make sure that your pelvis is tucked forward and you're in the same alignment that you would be in a plank. If you feel like you're going to fall out of it and fall forward, bend at the hips and send them back towards the board to catch yourself. Don't let yourself fall forward. Stabilize and breathe here, inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the mouth. This really helps to be in a kneeling position because we can press those heels into the board and help us to stabilize. Now we're going to slowly lift the bar up overhead and bring back down. Take it a nice slow pace for the first couple to make sure that you've got it and you're stabilized. So we're going to start at that starting point and we're going to lift up, trying to bring the arms back to frame the face and then coming right back into that plank. All the while, the body is holding that outreached plank position. Remember, if you lose your balance, to hinge at the waist and send your booty back towards the board to catch yourself before falling. Lifting up and out of there. Good. Now we're going to go ahead and lift the springs. I'm coming up to a level 9 on my board. So I have my hardware that's above my shoulders is an 8, and then I want to move up to the one above that, which is a 9. Now we're going to take that rollback bar in front of us, and we're going to come standing with our feet in a Pilates V, and we're going to press out and reach away from the board. You'll know right away if you're too far away and it's a little bit too much weight. I had to walk myself in a little bit closer to the board. Good, and go ahead and plank and reach out here. Again, if you're taller than me, as most people are, you may find that your springs need to be higher on your board. But the hardware that's just above my shoulders, the one above that, makes it a perfect position for me to step out and plank. We're still holding stagnant here. And in a moment, we're going to add in that overhead lift. Nice and slow on the first one and pull back down. Try to stabilize through your body, through this movement right here, lifting up overhead and returning. This movement while you're holding the plank feels familiar and close to some of the movement that we do on the reformer. But of course, the weight of those springs and the shifting and balancing of your body here is just completely unique to the springboard. Now right here, we're going to add in a challenge. We're going to lift up into releve. Do so with caution for those first couple. Make sure that you've got it. The bar is still out in front. We're holding that plank and we're going to lift and peel those heels up off of the mat and then lower back down. Try to hold that same plank, reaching out position of the body while you do so. Well done, bringing that back in. Next, we're going to be working on the chair. I'm showing the Pilates Pro chair here. I'm so excited that in the next week, I should be getting my new wooden Marathon stability chair. But for now, I'm working on the Pro chair, which is a great at-home option. We're going to take those pedals and make them separate here, separating them, placing them all the way down with the wrists on and stepping the legs away into a plank. And here we're going to allow one pedal to lift up and then press back down. Try to stabilize through the hips as much as possible. This can be a little bit rough and uncomfortable, the shape of these actual pedals on your wrists. So do what you can here, and if it's just too uncomfortable, that positioning on the wrist with this being round and metal underneath, then go ahead and skip this one. All right, and stepping the knees in right here. And releasing those arms, we're gonna go ahead and connect our pedal into one solid unit. In grabbing the yoga block for this next challenge, we're gonna have the hands on the yoga block and the feet are going to be on the pedal. So first, we're going to take the feet where they should be on the pedal, walk the yoga block out away and get your sense of how far you're gonna be planking. And then we're gonna place the toes onto the pedal and find that plank position. So you can see how much they're wobbling around. That pedal right here floating in space is not very stable. You shift your weight and it's gonna go up and down. So it's a real challenge right here to hold those feet out straight and in place and have those hands reaching out on the yoga block. It helps a little bit to have them lifted up on the yoga block rather than down on the floor, and is giving me a lot more support, which my wrists need right now. Go ahead and step off 1 foot at a time. That was a real challenge. Make sure you're stable in it. Moving next to the reformer, I've got one heavy red spring on, one hand is going to be on the carriage extender, one hand on the carriage, and I'm going to step out into that plank. From here, the hand that's on the carriage is going to press and slide that carriage away and then return it back in nice and smoothly without slamming the stopper. Nice little challenge here with the body almost completely off the reformer and just the arms on, taking advantage of that sliding movement of the carriage. And stepping in. What we do to one side, we must do to the other. So now I'm switching, coming to the other side of the reformer, making sure that my hands are even, coming out into that nice plank, and reaching, pressing the carriage out and away with one hand and drawing it back in. And stepping it in right here. Next, I'm going to add on an extra light spring and go into the long stretch. Hands are coming onto the bar, feet are pressing out into the shoulder rest, and we press out and away and then draw the carriage in with our shoulders coming over top of the wrists. So we're really reaching over top of that bar and pressing away. When we come into these plank variations, usually the lighter that we are on the carriage, the more challenging it can be. So you could stay on one red spring here, or you could add on an extra light for a little extra help. Next, we're going to bring the knees down and move into the down stretch. I'm going to remove that extra light spring and just be working on one red right here. Lifting up the chest nice and tall, pressing away, and lifting back up. Same thing, knees are down. Now turning around for the balance control front. We're placing the hands onto the shoulder rest and pressing out, bringing those feet onto the foot bar. Getting into position is probably the most challenging part. Right here, we're keeping that body in a nice straight line, and we're taking those hands and pressing the carriage forward and sliding back. Balance and control. That's what's happening right here. This is an advanced exercise, and not everyone is going to be in a nice, secure place to come into this. Setting up for the next one, we're going to lower the foot bar the whole way down. forearm is down on the carriage extender, and we're taking the feet to those shoulder rests. The top leg is in the front. Now this is a really small, subtle movement. We're gonna press out long, bend the knees in, and extend them back out straight. You can take your top arm and lift it up to the sky here to challenge, or it can be down on your hip. Since I'm so short, when I bend in the legs, I don't have a huge range of motion. So it's really, really small for me right here. But if you're taller, you may be able to bend your legs in further and be able to extend out straight, again, with a wider range. Flipping over to the other side, forearm is down, and bend in those knees and press out. And as we're bending in, we're doing so with control, so we don't let that carriage slam into the stopper. Good, bringing that back down. For the next variation, we're gonna place the hands down onto the carriage extender, feet back against the shoulder rests, and we're gonna press back and slide forward here. It's very similar to the long stretch, but our hands are flat on the carriage extender and not up on the bar. So you lose that elevation, but you can also allow your hands to be placed flat rather than wrapping around the bar. Anytime that we change up our planks and take them at a different angle, we're gonna feel a little difference. Thanks so much for joining me at the Bennie Barre Pilates Studios today for my little variation of Planksgiving. I hope that you loved it and got a bunch of different ideas for how you can do planking, total body integration exercises on the mat and on various apparatus. Go eat something delicious, and I'll see you guys next time in the studio.